Leadership isn't theory. It's pressure. Responsibility. Decisions that matter. This is the Real Leadership Brief. Conversations with leaders shaped by experience. Tested under pressure. And accountable for the outcome.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Leadership Brief. This is Don. I'm your host. And today we have Oksana Lukash. She immigrated from Moscow to the U.S. at 13, turning personal upheaval into a lifelong mastery of transformation and resilience. Former Chief People Officer with over 20 years shaping culture in startups, Fortune 500s, and mission-driven organizations, has led companies through hypergrowth, layoffs, leadership crisis, and full cultural rewrites. Believes people strategy is business strategy, and that how you treat people is the ultimate competitive advantage. Let's welcome Miss Oksana to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Donald.
No problem. So why don't we dive back into a little bit of the past? What brought you into business?
Ooh, great question. Absolutely, actually fell into it.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, especially having come from Russia, I grew up right when it was still USSR, communist regime. So we were kind of told what we can and cannot do, right? Options were limited. But I, for some reason, have always been fascinated with travel. So when I moved to the US, was convinced all throughout middle school and high school that I wanted to find a role that would allow me to do that. And the most direct path seemed to be working in hospitality. Thankfully, towards my graduation and towards the end of 12th grade, somebody recommended that maybe I should get a job in hospitality to see what it's like and if I liked it, and before spending 4 years in school. And I'm so glad I did, because a month and a half in, no disrespect to anybody that's in that profession, but I just very quickly found out it was not for me. I came out of retail and it was like retail to the next level. So then I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took the safe bet and I enrolled in college and decided to major in business management. And during that time, started my career as an administrative assistant, then executive assistant. And then I got a job as an executive assistant to the director of HR. And that was a very pivotal moment. Because again, within a few months, I realized that the role was not as fulfilling and I had way more capacity to do more things. Shared that with my manager. She started giving me a lot more HR specific projects. Fast forward a few more months, I was fully an HR specialist, an HR generalist, loved everything about it, and decided to also do my emphasis in human resources in addition to business management. Mm-hmm. And that again was a huge propeller for my career, because when I graduated, I had the hands-on experience. And that's, as we all know, right, the catch-22 or the chicken and the egg debate that most college graduates are faced with.
Yeah, I think, for me, I went through the military, and then when I got out, my leadership experience and my maintenance put me in the managerial positions with corporate America. And I'm kind of like you. Wow, what a eye-opening experience, because it is completely different.
Yeah.
Would you say that you had experiences also from coming from Russia to America and having that background of seeing outside countries and the way other people live? Do you think that also helped you as far as in your career?
Oh, 100%. It's actually, I'm currently working on defining my own voice.
Mhm.
Other people use that, right, as a personal brand. And really, if I sit in it and reflect back, that has defined everything that I've done.
Yeah.
Because from a very early age, so my mom actually left Russia when I was 10, and the government at the time held me as collateral for her to have an incentive to come back. And if we rewind back, early 90s, this is pre internet, pre email, all the methods of communication that we have today. So all I knew at 10 was that my mom left, and it could have been a few weeks, months, years, or never that I was going to see her again. And we were separated for almost 3 years. So from a very early age, I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I had to navigate again, right, situations that are just very different, that nobody else or very few people could relate to. And I didn't know anybody else that I was growing up with that was going through what I was going through. And then fast forward when I moved to the US, again, right? Again, it's fantastic. And I'm very thankful for the life that I have. But my mom and her husband at the time could not relate to anything that I was going through. They've never been in middle school in the US or high school, or had to figure out how to get a first job or navigate any being a teenager, right, in a different
Yeah.
country. So I think from the very beginning, right, all of those experiences definitely have made me very resilient. And I think always from a very young age, I valued the quality of relationships and being able to navigate those uncertain situations through, right, partnering with other people.
Yeah, I think even scientifically, it could easily be proven that kids that have had to move from school to school become more resilient because they know, I've got to start all over again, and instead of letting that being a crutch and just not finding new friends, they start all over again, and they make that friend process and try to fit in and learn the new rules and the new okays and don'ts and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
kind of a good.
I don't think I've ever actually tried to fit in. I think I've always stood out, but honestly, in the best way. It's never been,
Mm.
oh, right, poor me. But I think,
Right.
again, right, young age, I was comfortable being in those situations that are so different, that made me different.
Mhm.
And I just accepted it and rolled with it.
I think that characteristic is what builds good leaders as well too. And not from the old saying, well, I guess that's exactly what you mean when you say lead because you're different. You want everybody to follow you. I mean, in a way that as a leader, you're not afraid to venture into that unknown. You know, taking calculated risks, knowing the goods and ins and outs of what you're doing, and then bringing other people to feel comfortable to follow you, not just because you're different, but because you are creating that path for them that makes it easier for them to come along.
Exactly. And you pointed, right, you hit it on the main point. It's leading others is not forcing them to follow you. It's a
Right.
creating an environment and building relationships where they want to be part of whatever it is that you're doing, and they're choosing to do that. And the way I
Yeah.
look at it, it's even in the word, right? Lead to me is about others.
Yep.
Unless you're leading yourself, which is great, but other than that, it is about other people. So it is accomplishing goals and, right, being better together versus, right, kind of a dictatorship.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, kind of a good segue into this next part. It says, you say culture isn't a slogan, it's a strategy. What do most leaders get wrong about this culture?
Ooh, where do I start and how much time do we have? From what I've seen, right, it's an afterthought. It's a lot of times, again, more of a slogan that is used, or again, this common phrase. It's a lot of times missed, where it's an exercise that somebody goes through and you have words on a page or on a wall, and that's it. Also, some of the misconceptions that one or two people in the organization are responsible for culture, and it's just there. The thing is, that is true. Every single organization has a culture. The difference is it intentional? Is it purposeful? Does it accurately represent who you actually are? Or is it just a hodgepodge of random things that happen? And culture to me is owned by every single individual in the organization. Culture is what happens in every single interaction, in every single conversation, in every single decision. It's who you decide to do business with, who you don't. It's how you communicate internally. It's the decisions. Well, it's actually what gets rewarded and what doesn't. It's what happens behind closed doors when nobody is watching. And the worst thing that I've seen that you can do is say that your culture is one thing, but then again, what gets tolerated, celebrated, and punished completely does not align with that.
Mhm.
And it just becomes, just again, words on a wall or on a page. And to me, when companies are very clear about it, unapologetic of who they are and who they're not, that becomes, again, your filter that you can, again, make all your decisions based on. That is where you are unapologetically authentic about what works and what doesn't. That's how you can, again, attract the individuals that would thrive in your environment and deter those that won't. And I'm not saying it has to be one way or another, or that only again, certain things work when it comes to culture. I think, again, you just have to define who you are and be very, again, clear about it and just own it.
Yeah. Would you say also that that's a sand trap that companies find themselves in that grow extremely fast, and where they're forced to have younger leaders that still don't quite have the life experiences to fall back on, and it creates some of those environments that you're talking about?
Actually, I do not. And I have a few companies that I've been part of that actually were all built on culture, and it was part of their DNA and every, again, single decision. And we hired people that just got it. And I
Okay.
think, again, when someone's personal values, or like no matter what values, just who you are at the core, strongly align with what's important to the company, and you find that, that's where the magic happens. And I think that's where age is almost irrelevant, because a lot of things, if the alignment is correct, are common sense. And I've been, for example, in one organization I joined when we were about 200 employees. We were a 24/7 operation. We grew to over 600 in less than 2 years. And our culture was even stronger when we were 600 than it was at 2. Because again, it was part of every single thing that we did. And we never compromised on who we brought in, who potentially left the company, what was rewarded, what was not rewarded. And I then had an opportunity to work with the same incredible CEO building another company where I was employee number 17. And again, the exact same thing. So when you hire, again, people that are going to thrive in the environment that you're building, you more just need to be there to remove obstacles out of their way and give them the tools that they need to accomplish what they're doing. And then honestly, just get out of their way and let them do all the incredible things that they are. I think what happens is, it's when you're not thinking about it and it's not a priority at the beginning, and you go through the explosive growth, you don't have a North Star. You don't have anything to anchor on. You have not done the difficult work and the intentional work of building the camaraderie, of building the teamwork, of building the foundation where, Donald, you and I know how to communicate. We know the differences in maybe our communication styles, because you need to do that when everything is great. If you start in a way investing in that when everything is on fire, we're working 20-hour days, we're growing exponentially, that's where everything gets tested. That is not the time to start investing in that.
So the most important part then would be to establish that DNA at a very early stage. and then avoid the sand trap of hiring for the sake of filling positions versus hiring because they're the right fit. And
it is very like, what is a fit?
Again, like what you're saying, somebody that aligns with the DNA and the culture of the company.
Right. And especially again, and that's where I say be very clear of who you are. If you are a business that wants to stay in the framework where you've been, there's not going to be a lot of changes. You just need folks that can keep it going, right? Not upset the apple cart or this, whatever the appropriate saying is. Then again, be clear about it in your interviews. Be clear in, right, the job descriptions and all the posts that you do, and tell folks what they're looking for, because then you're going to need to hire a certain individual that is looking for that type of an environment. Because now if you're going to hire somebody that wants to grow, that loves the fast pace, that wants to come in and just make lots of changes and do new things, they're going to be miserable. Versus, right, let's turn it around. If you are an organization, and I'll use specifics from my experience with pharma and biotech, let's say that you are in the clinical phase and you're about to go commercial, and you know you're going to go through, again, explosive growth, and you're going to triple, quadruple in size in a span of 12 to 18 months, probably you should be hiring folks where you can be, again, unapologetic of everything that's coming. I've always kind of tried to scare candidates out of a job and tell them all of the things that I know that are coming, versus hiring somebody that's looking for that stability, that wants to come in, that wants to do a fantastic job, but they're like, right, I want to clock in at 8. I want to know exactly what I'm doing. I want to leave at 5 and not worry about it. So now if you're going to hire somebody like that, where your direction changes, every half an hour, they're going to be miserable and you're going to be miserable. That's what's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't even imagine that kind of growth. That is insane.
It's so much fun though.
I bet it is. I can't even, I've never been in the pharmaceutical industry. So, I came up in, my first company was a trucking company. So I was in the after side of that, and I could tell the pulse of the industry as a leading trailer. I knew when things were going to start coming up in the future. And I knew early enough when things were going to start slowing down, because I could start see it in freight and rates and everything else. But I can't even imagine in a matter of an 18-month span, tripling in size.
Yeah. And it's very common in that industry, very common, especially if you are launching brand new therapies, medications, if they're first in class, meaning nothing else exists, and you're going to be the first to market addressing an unmet need. Things get wild and very fast in the best way. But that's where, again, you need to be able to explain that so folks know what they're signing up for. And I think that's where companies are also absolutely, we have to do a better job, because I think it's been more like, we're the company, we're going to hire somebody, you're getting a paycheck, here are all the other components of your compensation package, right? We'll talk about promotions later. And we're kind of do the bare minimum for employees, but expect them to just, again, move mountains and do things that have never been done before.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. In order for us to be able to motivate people to do that, you got to create environments where, again, you're going above and beyond for somebody, so they want to go above and beyond, not because they're forced, but it's just they don't know, how not to do that.
Right. Yeah. And those are two different types of people. I seen that as a leader, especially a young leader in the military. You get a mixed pot of people and backgrounds and cultures and desires, and you've got to figure out who it is that you've got to watch, because they're so motivated that they want to get ahead and they're leaving people behind, but yet then figure out, how do you motivate those ones that are behind? And the way you do it isn't by throwing them in an environment that they're not ready for. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's understanding their why. And that's we need to flip it. And I think, again, the misconception that I've seen over and over is a lot of managers, right, say, I don't have time. I don't have time to invest in one-on-ones and get to know every single person on an individual basis. And I actually, disagree with that. Yes, you absolutely do. Because the amount of time that if we zoom out and look at the amount of time it takes us to follow up with somebody, to get an update on a project, to get an update of whatever initiative is going on that somebody on our team is working on, and all that back and forth, imagine that instead of death by email, text messages, Teams, whatever your preferred form of communication is, we actually sat down in a room across from one another and talked for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
First of all, we're building such a deeper understanding, relationship, trust. We learn how to communicate with one another. We're able to be ahead of any potential bumps, pivots, anything that might be veering off track. We can help each other before, again, trains, get off the track versus the coulda, woulda, shoulda, right, of things that happened a year ago. So again, I think if we look at how much time we waste with all the follow-up and how much time if we invest it wisely in those meaningful check-ins and one-on-ones and how much value we would get out of it, and again, the individuals would get out of it, that's what we need to start doing. Because then you understand the why. You understand what each person means. And again, being a leader is about creating an environment where somebody else is successful. And you are only successful as a leader when your team is.
Yeah. Yeah. And not to mention, again, you're going to start to understand and know how your subordinates are working and when they're stressed. And that's going to allow you to put your pulse on projects. You're going to see, okay, look, there's a problem over here. Don's not acting the way he normally acts. He's pretty stressed out. Let me take that time to spend a little bit more time with him to figure what that out is versus somebody that's not got any problems. I can do my little daily check-in over here, but you're saving time and you're potentially reducing problems because it's going to put you in that problem solving mode much sooner than it would if you were just waiting for that email and waiting for them to decide when it's time to tell you we've got a problem.
Right. And I think, again, build that relationship on a true human level. Approach things with curiosity, right? Checking with somebody to make sure, to your point, they are okay. And it could be, again, if something is going on at home or with the family or somebody's sick. And that is, again, create those spaces for the person to go and take care of what's important to them, right? In that moment, because forcing somebody to be at work physically while their mind is somewhere else and they're emotionally impacted by whatever might be going on is one of, again, the worst things that you can do, because that's, again, how, right, mistakes happen. That is how people start burning out. That's how distress starts building. That is where it's just, right, it's not great in any way, shape, or form versus giving that person the space. They address whatever needs to be addressed, and then they're able to come back to work and focus on whatever is going on that's important in the office too.
Yeah. And you did two things there. One, you are going to increase the output that employee is going to be able to do for you when they come back. And two, you earned a new level of respect from that person because at a time that they were needed, you were there to support them. And now, when you need them to go above and beyond, they're not going to have that problem because they know when they need you to go above and beyond, you're going to.
Exactly. It's like Brené Brown and Dare to Lead beautifully said, right? And that right there, exactly what you said, is the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yes. Yep. I agree 100%. So with all that being said, right, how can someone stay human while they're making these hard decisions?
Great question. I think, again, it's just keep the other person in mind, right, with everything that's going on. And again, businesses, right, have to make tough decisions.
Yes.
There are, again, right, unfortunate situations, and we've seen it everywhere over the last, right, couple of years of massive layoffs and cuts and everything else. Everyone understands that that happens. But at the end of the day, you cannot lose sight that those are people.
Right.
And they have lives, they have loved ones, they have families. And I think, again, it's how you still interact with them and treat them through the tough decisions. So if we are talking about a layoff or a separation, that more important, right, than across their entire tenure, that's still where integrity, where respect comes in, where you want to treat people with dignity, not want to, you have to treat people with dignity. And I think that's where share whatever you can. And again, be able to help them out with that journey or the transition. And I always say, too, especially in situations of a termination or where a company outgrew an individual or an individual outgrew the company, it should never be a surprise. So that's where all of the communication, the check-ins, the one-on-one, all of those conversations, that's what makes the difference. Because let's say, right, Donald, you and I are on a team and I am your manager. And I know that your career aspirations and what you want to do next is something that currently doesn't exist in our company. And that you want to, right, hit that milestone in a year. My role should be not putting you aside and be like, well, Donald's going to leave in a year. So, right, I'm going to focus on everybody else. And unfortunately, I think that's what happens a lot of times. It should be me still investing in you, giving you opportunities to gain the skills that you need for that next role, even if it's outside of our company, and then celebrate you as you go, right, and get that position wherever it might be. Guess that is what to me is leadership and dignity looks like.
Yeah.
First of all, you are always going to remember that we, right, again, hope to get to what was important for you. You're still going to be probably the biggest commercial and advertisement when it comes to sending, right, potential candidates our way. Because then you're like, I would not be where I am if it wasn't for this place. There's never going to be an issue of having enough qualified candidates. And then also, who knows? You might boomerang back because we might, right, go our separate ways for a couple of years. You gain new skills, you continue growing. We might evolve and change in such a way that now roles that never existed before do, and you come back. It's like everybody wins. But even if you don't, why not celebrate each other? Why not create, right, the alum networks where you keep in touch with somebody? I think another thing is a lot of times we've all probably, or a good chunk of us have been in the situation where the grass seems greener on the other side.
Yep.
We went ahead and made the transition for whatever reason. And then a few months or 6 months in, we realized it's not what we thought it was. And maybe we should have asked, right, some additional questions during the interview process, but we're not happy.
Yeah. In my case, it was a month and a half.
Most of us are not brave enough to reach back out to our previous conversation or a previous company and previous leader.
Yeah.
So why not ingrain it in the company where you follow up with somebody 3 months, 6 months, 9 months after they left, just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? I hope everything is great. Would love to hear from you. And find out. Because what if, again, you're missing them and you can't find anybody as awesome as they are, and they're missing you, and both of you are sitting by the phone waiting to call each other, but neither one of us is brave enough. Let's make those things okay.
Yep. I that exactly what you just said happened to me. Like I said, I owned a trucking company. I was leased on to company A, and they were going through a change that I was having a hard time with. At least I thought I was. And I thought the grass was greener with company B. And so I left. I left on good terms, and about a month and a half into it, I was sitting in Utah, not happy, not liking my decisions. It was a Friday, and I was going to be headed back to Georgia to go home for a while. And I called my old carrier that I was with, and they were like, "Well, when could you be back here?" And I said, "Well, I'll be home Sunday." They said, "Well, we'll put your pump back on your truck on Monday, and it'll be like you never left." And I was happy. That was the happiest trip home I've ever made.
Right. And I think another beautiful thing that you've done, Donald, and I actually did a post on this as well the other day, is we spend so much time overthinking things and
Yes.
doubting and playing the what if game. And most of the time, the what if game is negative. We never really stop and be like, but what if things all work out?
Yeah.
So instead of, again, hours or days and weeks that we waste in this hypothetical mess land in Assumptionville, ask the question.
Yeah.
Most of the aspects of the life that I currently have is only because I asked the question. I wouldn't be with my husband, right? I wouldn't have had my daughter, right? Like when I did. Most of the roles that I have, I wouldn't have. Like my business, literally almost every single impactful thing that I'm proud of and achievement is because I asked the question and got the answer versus playing, right, the what if. So I want folks to get comfortable because you're going to drive yourself crazy with the what if game anyways.
Yeah.
Ask the question, get the answer, and then just know. And if it's a no, you tried and you know, versus never asking it. And it might have been a yes and the best decision, right, you could have made in your entire life.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think some of that goes back to what we said earlier. You just kind of got to get out of your skin and be willing to walk through doors of uncomfort and ask those questions. It took me a long time to get to that point. There was times that I was afraid to ask things because I didn't want to make somebody else mad, but I realized that you asking certain questions, especially before the pre-hire, before you commit to start working for a company, this is not the getting to know stage as much as this is making sure that I do know and you do know where I'm coming from, and we start on a even, honest playing field.
Mm-hmm.
If I do start working or you do hire me, and I think a lot of people forget that part of it, that it's not about uncomfort and being rude or being upset. It's just about laying the cards on the table and being honest, so that you do start from the right foot forward. The worst thing that always happened to me that would make me so mad is I would hire somebody, they would start working, and then they would tell me, "Oh, I had a trip already paid for. I'm going to need 3 weeks off." Well, you could have told me that before you hired me, and we could have waited until after this trip to start your employment. Versus now, you don't even have that much time in vacation.
Yeah. But you brought up a lot of good points. And what I've seen too is a lot of people interview for roles like they need the job. And
Yeah.
again, everybody needs a job, right? In whatever
Right.
capacity that it is. But when you are interviewing like that, there is a level of desperation. There is, right? Again, you're giving in away all of the decision making to the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
They are in the driver's seat. And I apologize for my dogs if you can hear them.
Okay.
Just ringing the doorbell. But what people need, I can close. Hold on, let me close the door really quick. But what they need to do is interview like the job needs you.
Yeah.
That's where, right, come to the table. And I think another thing that I would love to share with the listeners, that I think a lot of folks don't look at it this way. When a job is advertised and posted somewhere, right, it is company's best attempt to figure out what their needs are in that moment. And again, best attempt. And it also depends on how much time they actually and effort they put into it.
Yeah.
Same as our resume is our best attempt to put all of our accomplishments, skills, and what we've done that we assume somebody is going to find valuable.
Yeah.
So in a company, in a lot of states, I think it's now 12 plus states that have pay transparency, where now they advertise what the role pays. People need to understand that that pay is for the role.
Right.
The reason I want to stress that there is a thoughtful way to postpone compensation conversations until later in the interview process. And the reason, if you can do that, why you want to, the further you go in the interview process, the more it becomes not about filling the role, but it becomes about hiring you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what you want the transition to happen, because now the pay is not attached to the role. It's attached to what you bring to the table. So
Right.
that's where it's important, I think, at any level, even if you're just starting out, even if it's your first entry level job, to learn about what the company does. How do they make money? What are their goals, right? I think, again, 5-10 years, the world that we live in the pace of change, that's right, anybody's guess. But even what are their goals over the next 1, 3, 5 years? Are they looking to grow organically through acquisitions? All of that? Are they looking to get bought? Ask all of those questions and understand, so that way you understand potentially what opportunities you might have. You can then pull from any experience and even college, any volunteer opportunities, internships that you might have done, of how they can help the company achieve the areas that they're going into. And then again, that's how you help the company transition that focus from filling a role to you now being part of their today and their future. And that now opens the conversation for negotiations. And I think it's also important to remember that you can negotiate things other than also just the compensation, the hourly rate or the base rate. There's so many other things that you can look into.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are some great advice for especially younger people that are getting out of the college level and they're going maybe for their first professional interviews. Those are important things. I learned something just now. I didn't even think about what you just said about how the further down that application process goes, it almost shifts a little bit of the power more to you than it does to the company. One, there's now less choices because they've narrowed down, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 people, whatever, and that they're choosing from. But now it's not about you pass the skill set test. Now it's the fit test. You have what we want, but are you the right person? And I think this is where maybe leadership questions become more important and so forth as well. But yeah, at that point, the power definitely does shift. But a lot of people don't think about how much does it cost to go through the interview process for a company, finding that right person. They don't want to keep doing it. It's not good practice.
Yeah, and the statistics actually are staggering. Some of the things, like I mentioned, I'm happy to give some of the, actually useful tips for your audience. When a compensation question does come up early on, I think it's absolutely appropriate to say, hey, I would love to get the market rate, but at this point, I don't know enough about the role and the expectations in the company and where the company is going to be able to accurately answer the question. So I would love to learn more. And I also would love to learn, all the aspects of the compensation package. So again, you're not being rude. You are saying that, all I know right now is the words on a page that were added for job description. And all of us have been in a situation where oh, we forgot about this project and we forgot about this. And depending on how unique the role is, and if it's maybe been open for a while, the whole need might have changed completely.
Yeah.
So again, right, you absolutely can answer that way and wait until a little bit further in. And also just remember that you and the company, regardless again of your level, should be on the same playing level field, because it is a relationship. And any relationship in our life only works when it's mutually beneficial for both parties. So I want to give that, right, like oomph and a little bit more confidence to each person that is going to interview. And again, now we have tools like, again, all of the AI products. It is the best interview prep you can possibly have, right? To where it can come up with unique questions to ask, not just like off the wall, but have AI do deep research on the company, all of their, right? Releases, press releases. If they're a public company, all of their filings, what's been going on, right? Have they been growing? Have they been contracting? Have they been staying steady? Where are they trying to go? Right? You can feed in the entire job description. Have it again say, hey, here's my resume. Find the person that you're interviewing with from LinkedIn and things like that. Say, I'm interviewing with this individual. Help me prep, right, for this position. And here are the items that are important to me, right, in any company that I join. And then that way, again, you find out things that are, again, that matter to you, the same way as you're hoping the company is spending the time to prep to find out if you have the stuff that's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this has been a really good conversation, and I really do hope more younger people that are starting their careers take the time to listen to this, because you brought up a lot of really, really good points. And even older people like myself, even like I just said, I learned something too, just sitting here talking with you. So I think it's great that we're able to have these conversations and pass on our knowledge and our leadership to younger people. So is there some place that people can follow you or reach out, LinkedIn or somewhere?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place. Also, everyone is welcome to go on my website. It's oksanalukash.com. It is being updated right now, but there is an easy button to click on that takes you directly to my LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to have a conversation, wants to just, again, connect, right, absolutely happy to do that.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure that we put those links down there for you. And again, I hope more people reach out to the guests that come on the show, because you guys have got so much knowledge and experience, and it's great that we're sharing it and helping other people. So that's what I appreciate.
If I can just encourage people too, because here's the thing too, right? If you want something different, you need to do something different. We all know, right, the definition of insanity. So it's, again, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. And the world that we live in, this is the fastest rate of change that any of us have ever experienced. But at the same time, this is the slowest rate of change any of us are ever going to experience. So we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And again, if you want exactly what you have right now and you want, right, as little change as possible, that's fantastic. Then you don't need to do that. But if you're striving for something different, doing the exact same thing that you were doing before is not going to get you there.
Amen. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope all of you guys enjoy this show. I know I do. There's a lot of good little nuggets there to take. Again, I appreciate you coming on, Ms. Oksana, and we'll get all these links and everything put in there, so you guys use them. That's what they're there for. Y'all take care, be safe, and remember, have a great day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Real Leadership Brief, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. You can find more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.